Welcome to Sturgeon Spirits. I'm Karl. Come on in and have a great cocktail and a great time. Craft distilling industry is exploding at 20% a year. You want to give me, 30 gallons of beer that you can't sell because it's out of season? I will distill it and see what happens. Taught at UW Oshkosh, University of Wisconsin Oshkosh for 23 years, and I was really looking for a way out.
You listed all these things in the course of this episode. I have to try now. And
that's right.
My producer here is going to drive me home.
Shrimp vodka, don't do it.
No, you tried shrimp vodka.
We did we dried shrimp infused vodka. Oh, it was awful.
I'm Alan Kogan. Join me as I highlight small businesses with interviews on site at distilleries, breweries, and more. My mission is to share the stories of the awesome people behind the craft. Welcome to Crafted Conversations. Well, Karl, we're here in Oshkosh at Sturgeon Spirits. Thank you for having me, first of all.
Hey, you're welcome.
Yeah, we were here. My buddy Nate here, who lives in Oshkosh, who I stay with frequently, is a good friend of mine. We were here, about over a year ago, when you had just...
Almost 2 years ago.
Was it almost 2 years?
It was, I think it was the fall of 2022, late fall 2022,
that sounds right.
I think.
Yeah, so we were just Googling around and trying to find a distillery, and you popped up, and you were brand new, and we're like, this guy is pretty cool, doing some awesome stuff, and I didn't know anything about you, and so... We met briefly while we were here, and I had a long conversation with your bartender, had some awesome cocktails, probably too many. But I wanted to come and talk to you now that I have the show in full force and we're doing video and we have this awesome backdrop of Oshkosh, Wisconsin. So I guess I just want to know more about you. So tell me about yourself, introduce yourself, and how you got into the spirits world.
Well, no, it's great because I remember you being here. I think we had that conversation. I'm like, yeah, Alan, I know I've been following you on social media after you came in here because I was sort of fascinated and watched the show grow. So
sure.
It's really cool that you're back because I have seen all over the country interviewing people, and I think that's super cool.
I appreciate it.
So my story is really that I got into this because I was looking for a new direction in general. So I was I guess I still call myself a moonshiner. That's the clearest way to explain it. I was just started distilling in my garage just for fun. I got into it because, in fact, it's kind of the way the business went. Is I was just doing like a sugar washes and really kind of clean spirits, and then doing my own infusions. I'd take cherries from my tree. I'd take rhubarb from my garden, apples from the backyard, and I would just take that spirit that I had made and infuse it, and make it into liqueurs, give it out as gifts, that kind of thing. So I've never was a brewer. I got into it straight from the distilling side of thing, and so I was just having fun in my garage. My wife wouldn't let me distill in the house, so it was outside because it might blow things up.
Yeah, right.
And so I was doing that. I had probably 6-7 years, and then I taught at UW Oshkosh, University of Wisconsin Oshkosh, for 23 years, and I was really looking for a way out. That development, that career had really kind of run its course. So I taught Russian history.
Oh, wow.
And there are two things. One is I've been teaching a long time and I was looking for a new direction, but Putin screwed up my world, right? I mean, obviously the Ukrainians are suffering because of his invasion, but even before that, he made it super hard to do history research in Russia. So I used to go to Russia every year. I would go visit the archives. I would do interviews. I would just kind of go and hang out. I haven't been there since 2010 because it became impossible to do that part of my job as a professor, which is to do research and to learn about the history and to find new documents and do all that fun stuff.
Wow.
And so the part of the job that I really loved, which was travel and research and hanging out in archives, came to an end because Putin's an evil man. And
Yeah.
And so I was looking for a way out.
Yeah.
And the second part of the equation that was really good is that in Wisconsin, we have a great state pension system where you can retire at 55 and get a state pension, which gives you some protection.
Sure.
So I planned the whole thing around getting out of my first career and having a little security. So I'm really actually doing this as a retirement project, which is, sort of the ultimate retirement if you think about it.
Yeah. Most people I talk to in the craft industry, especially the smaller businesses, it's mostly retirement or, a hobby. And it's, you've been able to, put your work in and time and earn your money in your main career. And then, you know what, I'm going to start distilling. So I love that because it's a fun thing to get into. And thank God over the last 15, 20 years, the laws have gotten a lot more friendlier to small businesses who want to start in craft, both brewing and distilling.
No, absolutely.
So I know you're the only distillery I shouldn't say that. Are you the only distillery in Oshkosh?
Yes.
Okay, so you are the only distillery in Oshkosh. How friendly was Oshkosh to letting a distillery opening?
I would say, Oshkosh was great. I have had the best relationship with the government officials, with the city, with the development agency, with Discover Oshkosh. I mean, this has been a really good town for me, partially because obviously distilleries are destinations, no matter where they spring up. And so I was a kind of addition to the notion that another reason to come to Oshkosh. But the second part is, which is something that worked out really well, is I'm really well connected in the community. Sure. I was on the school board now 15 years ago, and I've been active in local politics in a lot of ways. And so, I know the mayor, I know the city manager, I know the person who runs Discover Oshkosh, I know the head of the the Chamber of Commerce. These are all people who I was acquaintances and were friends with. And so one of the great things about Oshkosh is that it feels like a small town. Mm-hmm. Right? I think we're about 66,000 people, officially our population, but I had such a good network of support that it made it possible to make this thing go. And I think that was a bonus that I had that probably a lot of people don't have, that I knew the community, I was embedded in the community. And when I went to do this, people were really supportive because they knew me and already had a relationship with me. So I wasn't a stranger who said, hey, I want to start this crazy, weird business that, is explosive and, is a fire hazard and everything else. They would say, oh, we know this guy and we can work with him in ways that I think other people don't have that benefit. That worked out really nicely for me. And so everybody was really supportive as I went through the whole process.
That's good to hear, because I being from Wisconsin, originally, I was telling you, off camera, born and raised in the Milwaukee area. And now I lived in Virginia, and now I'm in North Carolina. Very, very, very state-controlled ABC states. Mm-hmm. And I've traveled across, I think I've interviewed in 7 or 8 states now. And the variation from state to state on laws surrounding the alcohol business is so interesting. I grew up where you can go to CVS and get an Everclear, and that's not the case in North Carolina. No, and they're closed on Sundays. I mean, it's very different. So but I am proud of watching some of the state legislators become more and more less archaic. West Virginia just for the first time repealed a prohibition era law to allow small businesses to start doing craft brewing and distilling. Wow. West Virginia has maybe 3 distilleries, and they're only because they probably know people, right? And that's frustrating. So, but as a consumer, I'm super ecstatic about having people like you who are able to come out and do the thing that they love. It's a form of artistry, if you will.
And Wisconsin has been great, actually. When we think about state laws, Wisconsin actually passed December of last year what they called the Alcohol Modernization Act,
yes,
which made things a lot easier for us. So the original law says that a distillery, we can only serve products that we make ourselves,
yes,
which is a great inspiration for creativity,
sure,
but it does make things a little more difficult. So we were making our own vermouth, and we're making our own triple sec, and we're making our own, Aperol and Campari, and all these things. We had to make it ourselves with our own spirits, and we will continue to do that. But they changed the law that we now have a full service license. We could serve beer and wine and anything we want, which is huge.
Sure.
And for us, I think the biggest institutional or government hangup is we can't self-distribute.
Right.
And though in other states, in some ways, ABC states are even better, easier to get into the distribution system if the state runs the control system. But here we have to make an agreement with a private distributor, and we are, as I always say, a rounding error on the budget of the 5 distributors who control 90% of the industry in Wisconsin. And so nobody works to sell our product except us,
right? Even
though we can't sell our own product,
right,
which is a huge distribution problem. And they changed that. So starting in January 2025, we can essentially sell direct to retailers. So we can sell directly to bars and grocery stores and do our own distribution, which is going to be huge in terms of helping us build our distribution business.
Absolutely.
And it was a great bipartisan effort. It passed, by 90+% of the legislators in a very divided state legislature, and the governor signed it. So there was a sort of a great groundswell to make the industry work better in Wisconsin. So I'm really happy with the way Wisconsin came together to do that.
Well, if there's anything that can bring us together in these divided times, it's alcohol.
That's right. I always say you can never go wrong starting an alcohol business in Wisconsin.
That's true. So were you born and raised in Wisconsin?
No, I'm actually from Iowa.
Okay.
So about
Midwest.
5 hours south of here. Okay.
I
came here for work when I started teaching at the university. So I've been in Oshkosh and Wisconsin about 23 years.
Gotcha. So when you wanted to start a spirits business, were you a beer guy or / whiskey guy coming up? Did you get into it just because you like the art of distilling? How did that come to be?
Well, I guess I started the story by saying I was doing my own kind of infusions and my own kind of clean spirits, but I also am a researcher, and as a professor, right, I was looking for an industry that I knew was good to get in. And as you've probably talked to many, the craft distilling industry is exploding at 20% a year. And small distilleries are doing really well across the country. And so when I looked at the landscape saying, what do I want to do for a new direction, distilling screamed out to me. And I did experiment. I'm like, do I want to do, house flipping? Do I want to go into consulting? What do I want to do with myself in this new direction? And distilling was just such a good industry in terms of business that I went down that path. So it was really, it was driven by both something I loved doing, but also a practical realization that craft distilling is a great industry.
Yeah.
And you've probably talked about this on your podcast before, right? It's an incredibly concentrated industry, right?
Massively.
80% of the industry is controlled by, 5 international conglomerates?
Yeah, Diageo and Brown-Forman and absolutely.
Right, and so the niches for craft brewing is where the expansion is, because people want local. They want to know the distiller. They want to have the experience of not some giant international corporation, but a person who's making the product and can tell the story. And it's exactly what you're doing with your podcast. This is the thing that makes Sturgeon Spirits great.
Yeah. Well, you're beating me to my punchlines that I use for the podcast. The fact that I'm talking to you here in your distillery, drinking the product that you make, that you have a hand on the wheel on, it's your craft. There's no PR firm I had to go through. You responded to my email. You're local. You worked at the university, and now you're here in the community serving its customers. I love that, and you can tell me the story, and you probably love talking about it because it's your heart and soul right now. Your blood, sweat, and tears.
I love it,
and I think that's what makes your product better. Because you could rate a whiskey from 1 to 10. Cool, Jim Beam tastes great, fine, and they have great history, great. But I personally think there's a bias of me having a product with the owner who made it, or the distiller, or whoever is at the building, and say, I made this and it's with my own passion, my own craft, and my whatever. It makes it taste better to me. And that locality makes it probably a better product for the people of Oshkosh. I think that's what
I think
what it's all about.
And that's what people want, right?
Yeah.
And that's what I want. That's part of the thing about being a strong local business. I try to buy local as much as I can in terms of my inputs, but also just whatever I'm doing.
Yep.
T-shirts, hats. I want it made by somebody in the community, not some faceless conglomerate somewhere.
Yep.
So I love that part of it, supporting my community. One of the other things that I do, which I love as a small business owner, is I love giving back, right?
Sure.
I support, the business we could talk about that is called Sturgeon Spirits, right? And that celebrates both the unique history of sturgeon and the ecology of the fish here in our ecosystem, right?
Yeah.
Lake Winnebago, which is right here. I'm sure if your listeners, viewers don't know, right? Is a huge inland lake. It's 10 miles across, 30 miles north to south. It freezes solid every winter.
Yep.
And we have the only ice fishing I should say, fish spearing season in the entire country. The lake freezes solid. You go out on the lake in the second week of February, you cut a hole in the ice, you wait for one of these sturgeons to swim by, and you spear it as it swims through this hole. It's an amazing experience. There's no place in the world like it. Yep. And so the brand itself celebrates something that is really special and local. And as part of the brand, I support the conservation groups.
Speaking of sturgeon, my grandparents retired to Sturgeon Bay. And every year, they did for a while, artists would create a sturgeon. They would paint on the body of a sturgeon and they'd sell it in an auction.
Sure.
And I always think sturgeons are so cool. They're just a prehistoric looking fish. I mean, they are prehistoric, but not many people know what a sturgeon is. So I think it's a great name because it honors the cool history of the fish. So
that's right. And, the sturgeon are super cool, right? They're gigantic. Yeah. They're probably 300 million years old. They're one of the oldest fishes in terms of evolution.
Yep.
They grow to, the biggest was over 200 pounds speared this year. They're 7 feet long. I mean, these are really prehistoric monsters, which are amazing. And part of the story is conservation, because the reason we have this weird season is it's a way to preserve the species for the future. And the reason the season came into being is because in the 20s, they were almost extinct and Wisconsin stepped in and saved them. And so I want to celebrate that and support it. And being a small business owner is great because I can use some of my profits to help out all these really great local organizations and help preserve the sturgeon.
Yeah, I love that. I love that a lot. So when you first started, we talk about all these laws and the community, all the things that did you know those barriers, or I shouldn't say barriers, but speed bumps existed, or did you, when you started it, we're like, oh, those are some permits I have to pull that I didn't know about? How much of it was a learned process?
Well, so I did a lot of research. So but what I would say is another great thing about Wisconsin, we have a group called the Wisconsin Distillers Guild, which is a group of about 40 distilleries across Wisconsin. Wisconsin is very small. We have about 50 distilleries maybe total in the state. So it's a very small crowd. Most of them are members of the Distillers Guild. And I started going to the meetings and just meeting other distillers across the state. And they were incredibly helpful. And they would, if I had a question, I could post it on the listserv. I could call someone up. I think we mentioned earlier, Ledge Rock Distillery, which is down in Fond du Lac, which is again a very local farm to table distillery. Awesome product,
yes,
and super great family who runs the place. They were there. Yep. I was like, I don't know what to do with an ethanol sensor in my, my high explosive room. And they're like, come see ours. I was telling you earlier, right? My plumber and my electrician had never worked on anything like this before. And of course, everyone's afraid a distillery is going to explode. Right. And so we all went down there and we walked through the ways that they had plumbed their system, and they ran the wiring and they had done the emergency sensors and the whole bit. And they all came back feeling comfortable to do that work here. But it's also, it's an honor to Ledge Rock, who said, you're not our competition, right? We're working together to grow an industry in Wisconsin.
That's my favorite part of craft so far. And there are big craft distilleries, there are micro distilleries, and everything in between. And not one of them is threatened by another. They are all in it. I mean, I'm sure there's outliers. We're human beings, right? But let's name them all. No, the familial experience of each other. We're in this together as small businesses, creating new brands. Because if you make a whiskey or a vodka or a gin here, and you give that same exact recipe to somebody down the street, it's going to taste different no matter what they do. And I love that fact of how the chemistry changes, how the yeast strains change. Everything is different, and it also lends to more options for a consumer. So, I mean, I think it's great that you guys are.
It's a win-win for everybody.
It's a win-win for everybody. Yeah,
it's great.
So, no, that's great. So, I think what's interesting about you though is that you just laid whiskey down. When you first opened.
Sure.
And it's not available yet as an aged whiskey.
Correct.
So you've been doing a lot of infusions.
Yep.
So tell me about that. You haven't sourced anything from anybody else. You just decided to start doing white spirits and infusing them with a bunch of different flavors.
That's right. I mean, as I kind of mentioned, it was part of my own backstory is that I like to do that. And I was doing my own kind of distilling to get just a nice clean spirit and add flavors.
Yeah.
And we sort of moved in that direction from the very beginning, right? Obviously, I think our first product, it was obviously vodka. And I suppose there's a Russian connection, as a Russian history, you got to do vodka.
Right.
But we do an all corn vodka as opposed to potatoes.
Sure.
Because potatoes are very messy. I talk to people about doing potato vodka, and obviously you can do it, but it's much easier to use corn.
Yep.
And then cranberry was my first infusion. And that was something I had done at home. So I kind of had a sense of how to do that. And then my first employee is Todd McLean, who is an amazing infusion guy. And so we just started down this path, like what can we infuse and how will it turn out? And, what new flavors can we come up with? And so it went a direction that I really didn't expect, in that we taken the vodka that we have to start out with and say, let's just put stuff in there and see what happens. And we've gotten some really, really amazing products. And then we got the gin going, and they're like, let's do the same thing with gin. And, we will do the same thing with whiskey when we finally get that barrel-aged whiskey off the stills, because it is just so much fun to experiment.
Right.
So we started with the cranberry, but we're up to, I think, over 160 different infusions we start with vodka, we do gin, we have our own agave or, tequila, we're doing our own rum. So we've got all those clear spirits that we've infused in a ton of different ways. And they've been a huge success. You have in front of you, I suppose, our mushroom gin, which is clearly our weirdest product.
Okay.
I don't quite want to say unique, because you never know for sure, but when you Google it, you won't find another mushroom infused gin that pops up in the United States. And it's been a huge success because it's got this great mushroomy, earthly feel that is just really fun, and it makes some great cocktails. I think the umami in there, it mixes great in all sorts of different ways. Yeah. And so we've just, and that's a really good example of something that seems really weird that turned out to be a really great product that we actually now have at retail here in the shop, and sell a ton of it. Because once people try it, if you like mushrooms, and I don't know, I didn't ask you if you like mushrooms, but if you like mushrooms, the mushroom gin has been a huge success.
I might as well try it. You're talking about it. No, I do love mushrooms, and I'm curious, what are the cocktail possibilities that you've encountered now? I mean, I'm sure a lot of that experimentation is also the drink you can make after.
Oh, absolutely. Because, so I would say the first thing that we did with it is we did a mushroom martini with our own vermouth, and the mushroom, and it's delicious, is just mixed with a little vermouth.
Yeah.
We've done something we call the murder hornet, which is really citrusy, which is lemon, lime, honey syrup, and the mushroom gin. We did a whole series of mushroom old fashions. So you do an old fashioned with the mushroom gin. People have really liked that.
Yeah.
We have one customer who really likes mushroom chocolate martinis. So, we're willing to try just about anything.
Sky is the limit.
Because the third part of the story, and I think this business runs because of great people, is I think the second person I hired, the third employee, Tanya, is a master of making cocktails. And she's actually, it works for the school district. She was a teacher. She's now does curriculum development for the school district. She works for us in the evenings. And she is astounding at taking something like that and saying, how do we make a great cocktail?
Right.
So if you look at our website, we have over 200 cocktails on our website that are pretty much unique to us, created by Tanya's cocktail prowess and Todd's infusions and my distilling. So we've got this just amazing crew that is super fun to work with and have come up with some just totally amazing flavor. You're also drinking, I think, what was that one called? It's the Tornado.
Yeah.
What it was.
Yeah.
Another aviation themed cocktail, because right now in Oshkosh is the biggest air show in the world. Just got over today. The Experimental Aircraft Association Air Venture, an amazing event here, and we put together a whole line of unique cocktails just for this week.
Yeah, I mean, it's smart. I think the best part of being a small business craft distiller is that experimentation aspect. You don't have a corporate overlord telling you what to do with a PowerPoint every morning. You can think of, I'm going to do that. Why not? Now, how much of a balance is it for you to fill the cash register, still pay bills, but also make what you want? Because I've talked to a lot of people who they found their groove, and then they have to set aside time and plan for, I'm gonna throw that whiskey in a port wine barrel and see what it does for 7 years. But I still have to make the stuff I need to make that will sell. So have you encountered any of that? Or are you able to just...
Well, I would say that we have our staples, right?
Sure,
and,
sure.
And we're a little different in terms of like, something like doing a port wine that takes 7 years. When you do a vodka infusion, we're looking at a month,
Right.
or two, and
That's a
we
good
have a whole
point.
rack in the back that's just filled with mason jars that are experiments. And we're small enough that if we do a 2-gallon batch and we make cocktails out of them, we've been doing really well, and we have a dedicated group of clients, customers who come in every week to try the new things we've come up with. They are open to the weirdness that you find when you're trying with a mushroom gin or some other things. And so I think we have built a reputation locally about new and novelty and creativity. And so our business has been driven by people who want that.
Yeah.
And part of it is because we haven't gotten to the whiskey segment, which I think is a much more traditional segment.
Sure.
That you're going to have it neat. You're going to have very basic things. For us, there will always be a new cocktail on the menu, and it will be something that you might not expect.
Have you had any interesting input from customers that made the light bulb turn on for you?
We love customer input.
Yeah.
We have customers who bring us fresh ingredients.
Oh, wow.
We have a rose infused vodka done with fresh wild roses that one of our customers grabbed for us and brought us a whole, garbage bag full of roses to pick off the petals and infuse them for about a month. And it makes an amazing spirit that you can make these really amazing cocktails, because it's got that it is, I guess, a really floral bouquet, a little sweetness. So you get amazing stuff like that. So we have customers who bring us things to infuse and to experiment with. So roses, we do a rhubarb, strawberry rhubarb. We have a bottle of it there.
Yeah.
Customers brought us rhubarb.
Sure.
Right. And then we do the infusions, and things turn out great. So we have customer input as we produce the products, customer ideas. I think I'm trying to think of what the last suggestion that we had from a customer that we just tried and turned out really well. We did, we weren't doing horseradish infused products. So now we make a horseradish vodka, terrific in a Bloody Mary, and not so great straight, but it's lovely in a Bloody Mary.
I think when my buddy Nate and I were here, we tried was it the peppercorn vodka? One of the spicier ones.
Yep.
And by itself, I wasn't a fan, but I was like, immediately, this would be great in a good Bloody Mary.
Mm-hmm.
Get a little spice kick.
And so what we created just this week, you maybe want to try this one later, is grapefruit juice, black pepper vodka, and a splash of simple syrup.
Interesting.
Fabulous.
Really?
You would never expect that combination. I wouldn't have expected that combination.
No.
But that was just... we're just brainstorming, and we were thinking about grapefruit, and we're like, black pepper, why not try that out? And if you remember the black pepper, it's a little spicy, so you get the tart and the spice and a little bit of sweetness. Yeah, makes a really lovely cocktail.
Man, well, that's neat. When you were doing this at home and you had the vision of, I want to do this on a grander scale in retirement. Was there a specific recipe or thing that you wanted to do that you're like, I want to make this in a bigger scale. I want to sell this to people. Was it like, what got you into it?
I had no idea that I would end up doing what we're doing here today. That's so great. I mean,
that's good.
What I knew is that I wanted to distill. And in some ways, the way I looked at the business was that I just want to be a distiller. In fact, I talked first about, can I just be a distiller and be in distribution? Do I actually have to have a cocktail lounge? Do I have to have a tasting room? My passion is in the creation of the spirits. But you do your research, and to make the cash flow work as a beginning business, you need a good cocktail bar and a good tasting room. Right. And so we went down that path, and I discovered that this is so much fun. I just had no idea. I wasn't really a cocktail guy. I mean, I was much more of, I'll do stuff neat, or just do martinis or very simple things. I mean, still probably my go-to is just a gin and tonic. Okay. But lavender gin and tonic, it blows my freaking mind. Brand new. Tanya just brought in fresh lavender. We picked the flowers off of it, infused it 36 hours in gin, and it is a phenomenal floral gin that goes amazing cocktail with just a little tonic. It is amazing. One of the greatest things. It's super simple and an amazing new infusion that I love.
Hey y'all, Alan Kogan here with Crafted Conversations. If you want to support the show and the mission of sharing the stories of craft, head over to buymeacoffee.com/craftedconvos. I'd really appreciate throwing a couple bucks my way to help me pay for travel, the equipment that I use, the time that I spend editing, all the software that I use. I really appreciate any support you can give me. And if you can't afford a couple bucks, at least give me some feedback or go over to your YouTube and subscribe or follow us on Spotify. Anything helps to make sure that we share the story of craft and give these small business owners a little limelight and get them out on a platform that really showcases what they're doing. I can't do this without you guys or your support, so I would really appreciate you pitching in and helping out. So I'll see you out there, and I really appreciate it. Cheers. You had mentioned about the infusions. Something just made me think about it because she's picking fresh lavender and bringing it in. Have you found any hurdles when infusing that you made a really interesting one? It's like, can I get those products or that sourcing that item again? Or we did it for 30 days that one time, but it turned out bad the next time. How does that science work?
Well, we tend to do a lot of really small batch things. So something like the lavender, because we're a small operation, we did about 3 cases. And now I'm a little worried because it's so good. They all sold. They literally sold in the first week because it was so pot. People had that cocktail and took a bottle home with them.
It's a good problem.
And now it's like, how do we find, now are we going to have to commercially source lavender? We probably can, but
right.
It literally, they have these lavender pick your own farms around here. And Tanya went to the lavender farm. She picked 4 varieties. She did some testing about which ones were best and came up with a really great, we did a whole set of infusions to find the best combination. We figured it out. We made 3 cases. That was really only about 10 gallons.
Yeah.
And we plunged in, and now it's phenomenal. And we're down to the last little bit, just the bit we saved for the bar. And now I'm like, we got to source more lavender. How are we going to do that? So this is, yes, it's a hurdle, but we also tend to do seasonal, right? Strawberry rhubarb, it's summer, it's fresh. We'll do it. It'll be gone. We'll do another 10 cases next summer.
Gotcha.
But we could probably do 20 cases, or we could do 50, but those are hurdles of growth that we haven't really quite figured out.
Yeah.
But it's a really nice problem. So again, what I would say, what I'm learning now and going into our second year is first year we're paying the bills, which is fabulous in the first year, but now it's time to grow. And so how do you go from 10 gallons to 50 gallons?
Right.
Because you can have people bring you enough things to infuse, enough rhubarb or enough lavender or whatever, but to go from 50 or 100 gallons, now you're really, you're not doing it in quite the same small batch anymore. And that's a different animal to have to deal with, and that's a hurdle we have to work through, and I don't have an answer to that question yet.
I'll come back, we'll talk again. No, but I'm curious. I don't want to make it sound dumb, but are you just steeping you're just sticking lavender in a mason jar and letting it sit?
Absolutely.
Like a netting to prevent particulate, or do you
we just filter it? We coffee filter it when it's done. Put it. We do it we have a whole set of gallon jars.
Okay.
So we have 10 gallon jars filled with, I don't know what the recipe is, a cup of lavender flowers that just infuses for 36 hours. You just paper filter out the particulates, and away you go.
Interesting.
It's a lovely, purple color. It's got all the flavors. So infusions are really pretty darn simple.
Yeah.
It's just the creativity, which is amazing.
Do you think there's a reason why other people haven't delved further into infusions? Because you're one of the only places I've seen that has really, really embraced it, which I love because it gives you so much creativity and room.
I don't really know.
Yeah.
And I think partially is we're open to it.
Yeah.
And in that I've got people who are really inspired and really like to do it. And I am just open to that kind of creativity. The other advantage that I have is because I am retired. Is that I have and my kids are out of college, is that I have a security that, I don't need to make a ton of money to make things go.
Sure.
Right. And so I'm not worried about supporting my family. I have enough in my pension that I could, pay my rent, and I don't have to, as long as the business cash flows in an appropriate way, I don't feel pressured to grow. And it's been successful enough in terms of people wanting to try the new things that we're doing that we haven't had to scale yet, but we're at the point where we have things. It's time to figure out how to start scaling.
Okay.
But that's what happened when you're only a year and a half old, is how do you scale? And I think the next phase for us is how do we grow and how do we keep that fresh, local, natural product on a 100-gallon scale instead of a 10-gallon scale.
Right.
Right. And we do it right now. We do cranberry vodka in 100-gallon batches. And we get, cranberries from Plover, and use them from Wisconsin organic cranberries and use that as our infusion. So I have some models, but I don't know. And we use Door County cherries in our cherry vodka. So we have great sources for that. But now I have to source, I don't know how many, 100 pounds of lavender. How do you do that? I have no idea. And I don't want to use an essence. I don't want to go to an extract. I want to use natural ingredients to do it.
Sure.
So this is a good question. If you find somebody else has an answer out there, I would love to hear it.
So invest in lavender farms.
That's right. Maybe.
That's a big property gain. No, and I think it's legally required. This is a joke. Legally required to use Door County cherries and anything.
That's right. Totally true.
Well, I want to try the other samples you brought out. So I know you said that this is your bestseller, the chocolate liqueur.
Yes.
So tell me about it.
So there's two angles, right? So liqueurs, I think, are clearly very good sellers in general. And then we use this as actually a winter special. We don't have it on the shelf right now because we make it from essentially Thanksgiving to Valentine's Day for our first year. It was hugely popular. We did a collaboration with our local chocolate shop here in town. And it's a very, very simple recipe. It's a vodka based with cocoa and sugar. And it's a really delicious liqueur. It's Oaks Chocolate is literally a mile down the street here in front of our building. And they, brought us the chocolate, and we have had a lovely local collaboration. It's delicious.
Yeah.
And we couldn't keep it in stock at Christmas as fast as we could make it. We were selling it.
Oh man.
And it makes some amazing cocktails, right? We do all sorts of really lovely chocolate cocktails with that.
This would be great with just add another ounce of peppermint schnapps.
Oh yeah.
And that's delicious.
We do our own creme de menthe.
Oh, okay.
Right. And
sorry, I should plug your product, not it.
Well, I mean, it's the same. We make a creme de menthe just for that. It's just kind of a grasshopper, and we do it. You mix it with raspberry or with cranberry or with our blackberry.
Yeah.
We do. You can do a latte with a little espresso and a little cream. I mean, there are so many possibilities, and it's just a really lovely, rich kind of cocktail, drinking chocolate milk almost. I mean, it is just so drinkable.
I was going to say it doesn't taste alcoholic, and that's dangerous.
It is.
It's tasty.
It's a really nice thing.
But the good thing too about that is it doesn't taste like it's a sugary, high fructose corn syrup bomb, because some of those are real thick and whatever.
Right.
So that's why I love talking to you about all the things you're doing, because you are so, dedicated to doing something natural, especially working with a chocolate shop down the street. Mm-hmm. That's the best part. That's cool. And I'm sure they love it. They love it, and they're a chocolate shop that's been around 100 years. The fourth generation still owns it. Wow. And the owners and their kids come in, and we kind of experimented together. Yeah. And they were our first tasters, so it's been really fun. And that's part of the joy about being a small businessman and being in a kind of a small community is like, hey, now we've made some new friends, and we can do stuff and help everybody succeed. Right. So that's a great product. I mean, and so you've kind of, like I said, I gave you a really assortment you can see in front of you. Those are kind of some of our really fun infusions. The mushroom gin, which is been a huge hit and a great mushroomy treat. The chocolate is a very different profile, super sweet. And then I was thinking, because you kind of are really focusing on your whiskeys, one of the things we did very early on, because we didn't have brown spirits, is did a barrel-aged vodka. Ooh. And that's the first one there. And I think it's delicious. It drinks like a very light whiskey. So it's been in a barrel. I actually used a fresh barrel. Okay. So it's just, you get the oak and the vanilla and a really nice kind of light whiskey. I always say it's a bit like drinking a barrel. And people have really kind of sipped on it like a
as I said, as a kind of a light whiskey, it was a kind of a substitute for having to wait 2 years or 5 years to have a barrel aged whiskey, because essentially it's a 100% corn, vodka that we put in the barrel just at the 40% and let it sit there for 3 months, and it picks up a lot of the color and the flavors of a light whiskey. And I really like it as a product, and we started that just so we could have whiskey old fashions.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't taste like a vodka at all. And I'm thinking of like the chemistry behind making vodka. Really, the only difference between vodka and whiskey is the proof that you're distilling at.
That's true.
So
But we have no barley. We use an enzyme to break down our starches into sugars.
Sure. So it really is just a light corn whiskey with some barrel flavor.
Yeah.
But it's a vodka.
Yes.
That's interesting.
And I discovered this because this is apparently something they do in Eastern Europe. So I was just like, I didn't know this before. I was just Googling around and I saw it and I'm like, oh, we have to try this. I did a small tabletop batch with just, oak chips in a gallon. I'm like, oh, that's pretty good. Let's do it on a larger scale.
Sure.
And it's very popular, and it was very interesting. It was very hard to get label permission from the TTB. It was a very weird dynamic, and I actually had the Watertown distillery call me up and like, the TTB is giving me a hard time with this. How did you get it through? Because of all these rules around recipes and formulas for the TTB. I mean, there's a whole. I don't know how much of that side of the industry you talk about.
Yeah, that's a whole other show,
right? But because a barrel for vodka is flavoring.
Right, a neutral spirit.
Right. So if you put it in a barrel, you have to do a recipe approval if it's a vodka. So for a bourbon or a whiskey, you don't have to do a formula approval.
Right.
When it goes in the bottle, but when you put it in a barrel as a vodka, there's a whole different licensing and labeling process, which is maybe the other reason we do lots of flavors, because I'm kind of hard-headed and I keep at these things and I call up the people and I'm like, I want to do this. We can get it to work. As far as I can tell, it's legal. It's just convincing somebody that it's okay.
Right.
Whether it's local or whether it's state or federal, you got to go through all those hoops. And I jump through a lot of hoops.
Yeah, well, that's the alcohol business. And I mean, those laws are ever changing. And we talked about that earlier. But I mean, that's good. That fools me as a whiskey drinker a little bit, and it kind of breaks my brain that that's a vodka, and that's really cool. That's a kudos to you. And did you just think about of it one day and that I'm going to throw some vodka in?
Yeah, why not?
Yeah,
this is part of our spirit here. It's like, let's try something new.
Yeah.
So I mean, on the other side, let me tell you, shrimp vodka, don't do it.
No, you tried shrimp vodka.
We dried shrimp infused vodka. That was awful. It's terrible.
Do you have any left over?
Yeah, you can try some.
I want to try some.
Oh my god, we actually have a couple bottles because we made a gallon, I think, and it is awful. We tried to do a shrimp cocktail.
Yeah,
where we did the shrimp vodka, horseradish vodka, and a little tomato juice. I mean, if you've ever wanted an alcoholic shrimp cocktail, there it was. Not good, but it did taste like shrimp cocktail sauce.
How many mushroom gins were you in when you came up with that?
No, this is oddly the first one. I've done some other mushrooms, but this is just boring white champagne mushrooms, dried. So like the white mushrooms you get at the grocery store that are dried, and we use them for the infusion. I've tried some oyster mushrooms. I tried some other mushrooms, and it's actually this one that gives us the best flavor profile.
But how many mushroom gins did you drink to come up with a shrimp infused vodka? That was my question.
Well, it's always this is the experimentation. It's like, what can we do weird that we haven't done yet?
I love that.
Right? And it was a total fail.
Is there anything in your Rolodex that you haven't tried yet that you're like eager to just like, hey, I want to try this one day? We just don't have the resources yet or the time.
Well, I mean, I think things that I think will be fine that other people have done, like I'm waiting for pomegranates to come into season.
Ooh, yeah.
We haven't done a pomegranate infused vodka. We've been talking, some people in here have suggested kiwi, and we haven't done just some fresh kiwis. So there's a lot of fruits that are going to make really nice products that we haven't done.
You just maybe remind me of something. I talked to someone in Maryland. They're Puerto Rico distillery. They do Puturo, and Puturo is Puerto Rican moonshine essentially. And what's traditional for Puerto Rico is they steep their rum moonshine with dried fruit. Oh, yeah. And they just throw it in a batch and leave it for, I think they up to 6 months. And the dried kiwis may actually make the rum neon green. And he gave me some samples. I'm like, there's no way. This looks like it's colored. And he's like, no, that's actually from the kiwi, which is wild.
That's awesome.
So I know you have some rum.
We do our own rum. Yep.
Yeah. So I would look more into Pituro.
Oh yeah.
That's the
dried fruit. Oh, that's a great idea.
Puerto Rican culture thing.
Right.
Apparently they're raised on doing it. They're before you're even of drinking age, you're helping your grandfather in the back with a still making rum. There's laws in Puerto Rico that have been like grandfathered in. The U.S. hasn't touched it. That you can make your own rum, and Pituro, it's part of your culture. It's really, really cool, and it's all very, very good.
Oh yeah.
Some of them you drink them, they're sticky sweet, and you're like, you have added sugar, not one drop. It's pretty cool. You show me the whole process. It's pretty neat.
Well, there's so much sugar in fruit. If you get good fruit, we actually have a big batch of peach infused vodka. Ooh. That is incredible. We haven't bottled it yet. But it's just back there resting, and it samples is so good.
Now that makes me curious. If you did a peach vodka and then aged it for 3 months in a barrel.
Oh yeah.
Because that would really round out some of that peach sweetness with the caramely notes of a barrel.
Oh, that's a really nice idea. I have some second run barrels that might work in.
I'll take a royalty check.
Oh yeah, that's right. But this is exactly it. It's like, oh my gosh, these are two great ideas you've come up with. It's like, and for us, it's like we should try this, and we probably will because that's kind of the way that we run around here.
Yeah, I
just love doing it.
So that brings us all the way around to your whiskey. So you have your moonshine, and you have this aging in barrels in the back. Tell me about that.
So this is actually a really new product because I was just, we rolled out this new brand, as you can kind of see the bottle there, called Sturgeon Spirits, which is a tribute to World War II aviation. And so the first brand was this Mustang Moonshine, which is a corn whiskey. Corn just is a corn, it's 90% corn, 10% barley corn whiskey. It's a very standard thing. And that, I wanted to go a little different direction, right? I'm doing a bourbons with a 70% corn, and I haven't done a mostly corn whiskey before. And so this is just a brand new product that we double distilled, and then I carbon filtered it because I wanted to mellow it a little bit for the moonshine product. And it's been getting pretty good reviews just as a moonshine.
Yeah. So that's more whiskey compared side by side with the vodka.
Right. And you get the whiskey and you get the barley, and it does really have a different profile to it. And so it's just kind of an experimental thing, but it was also, I wanted to have something new for this new and kind of fun brand that we put together.
All right, so will you be aging that at all?
I do. I will be aging that. I actually need to make another batch of that. I'm doing some tabletop aging, and it's going to be amazing. It's actually it's got a really nice character when you just put it on chips. It's been on chips for a couple of weeks, and I'm like, oh, this is really good.
Yeah, for sure.
And so that's coming. Another thing that's got to go in the barrel.
Right. So the bourbon that you have laid down, how many barrels where'd you get your barrels? What was that calculus that you?
So I don't have very many. I think I have 4 30-gallon barrels in the back is all.
Okay.
So, it's a fairly significant amount, but it's not, in the grand scheme of things, it's not a lot. And this is another problem, I guess you would say, of starting the distillery. So I started doing this at the tail end of COVID, and barrels were a disaster.
Oh,
it was so hard as someone who is just starting up, to acquire, fresh, new char white oak barrels. I couldn't find any for months and months.
Right.
I ended up finally getting some barrels from a couple barrel places in Minnesota.
Yep.
But it was, exorbitantly expensive. Yeah. Shortages, and it took me a really, really long time to get any barrels at all because of COVID. Utterly destroyed the barrel industry, and I'm sure others have talked to you about this. It was so hard, and as a new player, I had no relationship with anybody, and so they were supplying the people that they knew with the few barrels that were being produced, and so I just don't have very many barrels now that the situation has mellowed. But I'm spending my time on all these other things. I'm doing great on the clear spirit side. And so, it's a balance, right? How much money do you put in a barrel for 5 years? And how much money do you put on the shelf? And how much time do you have in your day as you expand? And I've been keeping the distilling for myself. I don't let anybody else distill yet. And so I'm distilling, 2 or 3 times a week, but I don't want to hire a distiller because that was the part that got me going.
Sure.
But it's time. I mean, because things are going so well, it's time to start bringing on some other folks. We're going to bring some more folks in. Right now, I only have 2 full-time employees besides myself, but it's time to bring a few more on. And
I mean, I that's one thing I've talked to friends about down the road, 10 years from now, doing a distillery or some kind of just fun project. And every time I talk to a small business owner like yourself, and especially ones that are focused on aging and whiskey alone, at least you're doing stuff that you can sell immediately, right? That's a little bit of a saving grace, but they're putting in a lot of investment and they have to wait 2 to 3 to 4 to 5 to 7 years. And that's daunting. I mean, where do you get that money is tied up somewhere, and you have to. Right. So a lot of them source to pay the bills immediately, or they do a lot of vodka and gin. And I mean, I've talked to a lot of people. You're talking about the barrel industry. I've talked to a lot of small places that opened right before COVID, and I mean, no one had a crystal ball, and then COVID happened. And then no one knew exactly what was going to happen during that time, and then it became what it is.
Yeah.
And in some ways, hindsight's 20/20 of how things were happening, and small businesses were left to kind of either flourish or flounder. And I feel so bad for the ones that, it's like, oh, I want to open a distillery. Oh, I can't get a barrel. So.
No, I was very fortunate. I was all ready to pull the trigger in 2019.
Sure.
Fall of 2019. And I had found a different building. I was starting to do I had an architect come and look at it about rebuilding it. And then there was those first hints of something bad going on in the world. And I'm like, I don't need to start it right now. Let's just wait and see. And I didn't take the plunge in the fall of 2019. And I was really fortunate.
Lucky.
And I some little bird in my, in the back of my head was like, wait until you see what this is before you take the plunge.
Yeah.
And it was a very lucky decision for me.
Yeah, no kidding, man. So how long are you gonna let those barrels back there age?
Well, they're 30-gallon barrels, and so the barrel makers tell me that's a 2-year product, and so we'll see what it's like.
Yeah, 30 gallons usually age a little faster.
Yep. And, it's all about volume to surface area.
Yes.
So the smaller the barrel, the faster the aging.
Yep.
So we'll see. And I haven't tasted it for a long time, so I'm not sure where we are, but I'm just waiting at this point.
Okay. Do you have any ideations in the future with more whiskey-like products, like a single malt or a rye, and play around in that arena when you have the time and barrels and things? Or?
Oh, totally.
Yeah.
I actually did a single malt, just tabletop aging. I did a 10-gallon. So we're sitting in front of what is essentially my test still. So this is an operating still, is a 40-gallon still. So which is a great size for just doing little batches like that. You can run a 40-gallon batch. It's a hybrid still. So I can pull it off. If I run it 2 times, I can still make vodka on this, but generally I can do a nice 80% distilling run on this and get a nice, 15 gallons of distillate that is perfect for, say, a small barrel batch or just a little gallon jar aging experiment. And so, I did my first agave, I did my first rum, I did a malt whiskey that we have on the bar for tasting that I speed aged, but we haven't barreled.
Sure.
The other thing that I've done, which is really fun, is I've done collaborations with local breweries. We do in Oshkosh, there's a craft beer week where the 3 local breweries get together and do a collaborative brew. I got 40 gallons of that and I distilled it. And so that's a nice distilled spirit. And so I can be part of Craft Beer Week with a distilled product. And I get it about 3 weeks before it goes public. And then I quickly distill it. I load it up with oak chips. And so that we have a kind of a really, young, weird kind of whiskey-ish product, which is fun. And I've had some really good successes. They did a cold hopped IPA. Doesn't really make a good distilled spirit, but it was all right. And it was fun to do that kind of collaboration with the local breweries. I actually did they gave me a local brewery, Fox River Brewing, had extra cinnamon vanilla stout, which I distilled. It made a fabulous product.
Yeah.
Because the cinnamon, they actually use a cinnamon and a vanilla extract in their brewing process. And that came through the distilling really nicely. And so it was this really nice cinnamon. It's not technically a whiskey because it's hopped. So it's a distilled spirit, but it was delicious. So a cinnamon vanilla stout made a really delicious distilled product.
Interesting.
And so again, that they had it, and he's like, "You want to try it?" And I'm like, "Sure."
Yeah.
You want to give me, 30 gallons of beer that you can't sell because it's out of season? I will distill it and see what happens.
I've heard of a lot of breweries doing, where they'll just give a mash that they haven't made yet that didn't turn out right, or it wasn't whatever, they give it to distillery and play with.
Yeah.
I think that cross collaboration between the craft markets too, because I mean, brewing and distilling are two different crowds. Or the same crowd if you're me. But and even wineries too. I mean, you'll probably get to the point where you want to try to source a wine barrel and play with a wine barrel. I mean, I love the fact that people are open to sharing, and I'm sure you probably, hey, well, cool, give me that. I'll give you a bottle, you give me some beer, and we'll.
Oh yeah. In fact, I just got a call this week from Ziegler Winery, which is on the other side of the lake.
Yeah.
And he's like, "Do you want some grapes?" And I'm like, "Yes, I want to do brandy. I haven't really done a wine-based brandy yet." I'm like, "Let's collaborate."
Yeah.
And he says, "I want to, expand my market, and tying into your brand and doing a brandy together, get some of his white wine. We can do something super cool." I'm like, "Yes, what a fun opportunity to collaborate with a local winery." Because I had one of those things I haven't found.
Right.
And he found me.
Yeah.
And I am on board. Let's do it.
I think that's another Wisconsin law, is that you have to make brandy.
Oh, absolutely.
Brandy old fashioned must be on the.
And we do an apple brandy. So we have a hard cider shop here in Oshkosh called Sunken Paddle.
Yes.
They make fabulous and super cool, innovative hard ciders. But they did the same thing. They would dump their, they couldn't fill a barrel. So they gave me a IBC tote full of hard cider, just a mix of all sort of things. And I distilled that down, and I've got a barrel of apple brandy just sitting in the back doing its thing. So
that's awesome. Another
cool collaboration of essentially their tales.
Yeah.
Right? They didn't have a good use for it. And it was just a blend that, is not going to go in a bottle because it's not one of their signature products, but it's great to distill.
Yeah.
And it's a delicious apple brandy.
Oh man. You've listed all these things in the course of this episode. I have to try now. And
that's right.
My producer here is going to drive me home. No, he's going to drink too. We're going to walk home. But I really appreciate your enthusiasm, because that's probably my favorite part, talking to people in this industry. They love what they do. It's a craft. It really is a craft, and you care about it. And also, the experimentation is probably half of the fun, probably 90% of the fun for you, right? Do what you want. And I'm really curious to see, where you go from here, and all the things. I cannot wait for your bourbon. Because I'm a whiskey guy at heart, but, kudos to what you're doing. This is really cool. A great example of what craft can be. And, I appreciate you having me here too. So,
I'm glad you found me. I mean, it's kind of cool that we all worked out. It was like serendipity, right? You found us when we just opened, and now you're back. You're doing well, so congratulations to you on your podcast.
Thank you.
We all help each other get better, and that's one of the great do better, and that's one of the great things about it. I think about the industry in general, and that's the way you should live your life. Let's make everybody do better. Make everybody succeed. And I love doing that. And as a small businessman, it's been great as an opportunity.
Exactly. And I think the mantra is that spirits bring us together, right? Despite a divided legislator.
That's right.
Who passes bad spirit laws or good spirit laws. Wisconsin's a good model for that, because West Virginia and North Carolina need to learn some things.
There's a little puritanical streak in the South.
Yeah, it is what it is.
Well, I have a good friend of mine, and he says, and I think it's really true, that particularly in Wisconsin, that bars are the new church, and they bring people together in ways that churches used to.
Yeah.
And I would say one of the great things about, besides all the experimentation, is the community that has kind of come together in my space in ways that I never would have fully expected. That friends I've made, friends other people have made, who use this space to sort of get together and socialize and be with their friends and, have a cocktail or two.
Yeah.
I built a space, and I don't know if you're going to do some be-real filming, right?
Yep.
We don't have TVs. We have a really nice view of the stills, right? People come in to have conversations with me and with each other. And I love that part of the community here in Oshkosh. So that's entirely separate from the distilling. It's just a really fun part of running a bar in Wisconsin that I just wasn't really aware of. I wasn't really a bar person. I was distilling in my garage. And now that I'm doing it, I'm like, this is a community that, supports us. I mentioned that earlier. They bring us ingredients. They bring us ideas. We have great conversations.
Yeah.
So it's a really amazing kind of experience that it's been beyond my wildest expectations of fun and friends and success.
Well, that's good to hear. So, cheers to what you're doing. Keep it up. I can't wait to come back in the future and see what you got going on. I look forward to tasting all the things, of course. It's private for me, not the camera. But so I appreciate you, Karl, and I will be back.
Awesome. Thanks so much. What a great conversation.
Of course. Cheers.
Yeah.
If you enjoyed this episode, I'd really appreciate a follow and share on social media, subscribe to our YouTube, and be sure to give us a rating and review on your favorite podcast platform. Everything you see and hear is out of pocket for us, including travel. If you support our mission of showcasing the amazing stories behind these small businesses, do me a favor and head over to buymeacoffee.com/craftedconvos. Buy Me a Coffee is an awesome way to help creators like me with simple one-time donations or a monthly contribution. Every dime goes into giving these breweries, distilleries, and more some much-deserved limelight. If you have any questions or concerns, please reach out. Cheers!